One day closer to that massive clash in Happy Valley, Ryan Day took the podium to talk to the media ahead of number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State, second top 5 matchup on the road for the Buckeyes in the last 4 weeks. And we're going to break it all down, what we heard from Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and Jim Knowles. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. That's Andy Backstrom. We've got a lot to get to. We're only going to get to a couple things, scratch the surface. Then you can go to lettermenrow.com, where you can get 7 days for free, or 7 days for $1, then 50% off your first year. That's 7 days for $1, 50% off your first year. Go there right now to lettermenrow.com, get that membership, and we'll talk about a lot of other things here, but we're going to get right to it. Zen Michalski, status up in the air. Lathan Ransom, we don't know. They expect a full week of practice from Lathan. I think I'm still a little skeptical of whether he will play based on things that we've been hearing over at lettermenrow.com, but Zen, I'm also skeptical of whether he will play, and they're keeping the options close to the vest, Andy.
Yeah, it sounds like if Zen Michalski is healthy, he could start. At first, that was kind of the answer that Ryan Day gave, and then he later clarified, well, if he's healthy, then we'll just continue to evaluate what the situation is at left tackle.
Yeah.
Donovan Jackson, of course, is an option there. We did see him in the game when Zen Michalski went down against Nebraska, and that was the first go-to thing that they did, was put Donovan Jackson at left tackle, Luke Montgomery at left guard. We got an explanation today of why he was at left guard and not someone like Austin Sareveld, who started 2 games there. And the explanation was, well, Luke Montgomery's been practicing more recently at left guard. Austin Saraveld's been practicing more recently at right guard and rotating in-game at right guard with Tegra Shabola. So that was the answer there. But still a lot of questions about this offensive line, the alignment, and what if or what would happen if Zen Michalski can't go.
Yeah, what I took from it was one quote from Ryan Day was pretty well sets the stage for what's going on, what's going to be going on at Penn State on Saturday. Is the chance to go to Indianapolis is on the line. He didn't mean that for him and Penn State. He meant it for Ohio State, because 2 losses in the Big Ten at this point, you would think with the way Indiana is playing, with the way Penn State is playing, definitely the way Oregon is playing, you might not be one of the top 2 teams at the end of the regular season. If you drop this game, a lot of stuff would have to happen for you. But that just shows you what's on the line. I've always believed this season Ohio State could lose 1 game, still get to Indianapolis, and play for the Big Ten championship based on the new way they're doing things. No more East and West. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much encapsulates what's on the line for Ohio State going into Saturday.
Yeah, and they've got to have good offensive line play. So whether that's moving Donovan Jackson out the left tackle, whether that's bringing a guy from the right side like George Fitzpatrick over, whether that's getting Zen Michalski back, they did say that they were. Chip Kelly said he was very confident in the offensive line. He sees it in practice. He knows what it can be. He knows that it wasn't good enough on Saturday. A lot of confidence still in that group, but it's seeing is believing at this point. We've got to see better from this line because it was not good enough. Another option, I guess, would be Tegra Shabola over there at left tackle. But I think right now, because they did talk about, they've repped Donnie at left tackle a little bit. I think right now, if we're handicapping this, I think the most likely scenario is Donovan Jackson plays left tackle, you bring in a left guard, and you go from there. And I think that's probably the best option, if we're being honest here. So it's still pretty much up in the air what's going to happen along the offensive line. There was not a lot of clarity there other than, there's just not a lot of clarity there. So now we just have to go with what we're seeing, what we're hearing. The run game was another hot topic of conversation, but that also goes hand in hand with the offensive line.
Does it?
You can't just run the quarterback all the time, Chip Kelly said. It was partially because of injury with Will Howard, but it's also just because you've got to be able to do other things with this offense. A lot of talk about this run game, Andy, and I think that just gets back to, it's like a big circle we're talking about here. Everything comes back to the offensive line.
They couldn't run the ball against Nebraska. They just couldn't do it effectively. Travion Henderson, below 3 yards per carry. Quinshon Judkins, below 3 yards per carry. If you go back to the Oregon game, aside from those big Travion Henderson runs, that's kind of where they were at in that game as well. So some concerns, some shades of 2023 with this offensive line and the inability to run block. But also, the left side of this offensive line going into the season was so solid. You felt really confident in Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson and the connection they had. And really, if you look at Ohio State's success in the run game early this year, a lot of it was on that left side.
Yeah.
And they were relying on that to be consistent through the season. You don't have that anymore. Now, do you lean more on your right side with Tegra Shabola and Josh Fryer? It might be something you have to do. Puts even more pressure on those two. But it certainly seems like the left side now is even more shaky than the right side. And that's not what we had going into the season.
Yeah, I thought there was hesitancy on the offensive line at times during that game against Nebraska, the way Nebraska was mixing up things up front with its defensive front. And that was with the full complement of guys in there, of course, minus Josh Simmons, because he's not coming back this year. Bottom line is they've got, you can't play hesitant. How they were, we tried to ask Chip Kelly in different ways. Was it the scheme, but basically how things were getting adjusted to? Obviously, they never did get adjusted until the final drive of the game when they got a big play out of Carnell Tate to get that jump started. When they needed a drive, they got it. So that is definitely a kudo. But how many times do you have to see different things to kind of get a feel for, okay, this is what Nebraska is doing. This is the way we should react to it in one form or fashion. So that was a little bit, eye-opening, I guess is the best way of putting it, with this offense halfway through a season, and you have a game like that where you couldn't solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
They did not solve the puzzle running the ball. And, believe me, Penn State it's a different puzzle, but it's still a big-time puzzle. So I'm curious, like anybody, to see how they line up on Saturday. You got to believe Donovan Jackson is going to get the start at left tackle just based on the way things have gone. Zen Michalski, if he could get back and feel good at the end of the week, then that gives them an option.
Yeah.
But, I think you got to practice all week with the guys you think are going to play on Saturday, because, boy, could they use it.
Yeah, I mean, Zen left the game on a cart. He was on crutches at the very end. The idea of him being healthy seems pretty foreign right now. I don't know if we should bank on that happening.
I understood he had some kind of hip problem, though, and sometimes you can almost get I'm going to say separated or dislocated kind of hip, and you can get it back in place, but you're going to be sore for a while and stuff. We'll see if in fact that was it.
And I mean, anything that
I just can't imagine having
anything that hinders any movements that he has. I mean, we know that he struggled on Saturday. If he's in any sort of pain anywhere, he's going to struggle even more.
Yeah.
And against this opponent, you can't have that. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball. Again, there's so much to get to here. Lathan Ransom, Ryan Day said they're going to get a full week of practice out of him. The understanding that we had was that it was probably more of a 2 or 3 week issue than it was a 1 week blip in the radar.
It's been 2 weeks now. It will be 2 weeks now, though.
A couple weeks here. I don't know. Jim Knowles said some things that made me think that they're going to get him back. Ryan Day said that they're going to get a week of practice out of him and evaluate. Does he play? Your guess right now is as good as mine.
But define what a week of practice means. That means
Correct.
He's actually going to be practicing. If he is, I would think he probably plays on Saturday. That's my feel.
I mean, I'm definitely going to be watching when they come off the field on Wednesday night here in the Woody.
I mean, he could have said he's still day-to-day. I mean, he did say that we're excited for a week of practice for Lathan Ransom. I'd be more positive about that than negative.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you just got to toss the smoke grenade.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but they've already played a game without him, and I think they're happy. That was the other part of my question I asked Ryan Day.
Yeah.
One was the update, and the other was what did you like or not like from the way your safeties played, and I think he thought they built a lot of depth in that game, which was a big concern going into the season. Jim Knowles talked about, Ryan Day talked about. We were unsure of what they would do at safety if either Caleb Downs or Lathan Ransom got hurt, and I think it was pretty impressive. I think that was, for me, the biggest takeaway with the defense, aside from all the changing with the blitz packages we did see, was the way they handled that rotation back there with Jordan Hancock playing really well at that deep safety spot, also rotating in sometimes at nickel, Jermaine Matthews, Lorenzo Styles Jr., Jalen McClain. They were all part of that mix.
Yeah.
They all got valuable snaps. So even if Lathan Ransom can't go, you do feel a little bit more confident knowing that there are guys that can do that. And I think it's noted, you got to put some respect on Jordan Hancock. Second year in a row, he's kind of moved to a different spot, right? Going into the season, we talked about him as one of those outside corners. He plays nickel, really breaks out after that Lathan Ransom injury at Wisconsin. Now again, another injury to Lathan Ransom, and he shows more of what he can do with his versatility. So it's almost like he's just maximized those opportunities where there's been an injury back there to Lathan.
Yeah, and the guy, I watched this guy, kept an eye on him quite a bit after he got in the game. Lorenzo Styles Jr., he played pretty well on Saturday, in my opinion. You go back and watch the video, you see kind of what I'm talking about. But he didn't look out of place at all.
No.
For one of another term. This is a guy who was playing, wide receiver, of course, at Notre Dame, and was going to switch anyway, but transferred to Ohio State. Everybody knows his history, older brother of Sonny Styles. But I just thought that was very intriguing because I see depth there. like you're talking about. You know, McLean. I mean, he had his moment, like Jim Noe said, he was in the right place at the right time, but the guy ran through his tackle attempt. You know, there are mistakes you're going to make in execution sometimes, but do you get it in terms of where you fit in the defense? And that was, I thought, on display on Saturday. Now, with all that said about the defense, I thought the defense really rose to the occasion at the end of the game when it had to have that stop. It got it. It played with ferocity. But, you know, Nebraska did drive to 3 field goals and a touchdown plus a 2-point conversion.
And
there was a goal line stand also. But the bottom line is they did give up. I mean, Nebraska had more success moving the ball on Ohio State than vice versa.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I don't know. I would like to get inside. If mojo could be lights or numbers floating around, I'd like to figure out the mojo of this team, Ohio State, right now, where it really is and what it thinks of itself.
Yeah. I mean,
you know, it's an intriguing moment for this football team this week.
I know one guy that I see playing with a lot of passion every time he's on the field. It's Lathan Ransom. I think he's back on the field, I don't think that just affects them from a personnel standpoint. I think it affects them from a morale standpoint. He is very fiery. He gets up. You know, we go to find photos of these guys for our stories, and every photo we have of Lathan Ransom is like him throwing his fist in celebration and stuff. And like I know that sounds stupid, but like when he makes plays, he's animated. He gets the defense fired up. Like, you need those kind of guys. And I think there was a little bit missing without him on the field on Saturday. And I know it sounds kind of stupid, but like those things go a long way. You got a 5th-year guy who's played just a blank ton of football. I mean, like, that could go a long way in helping this defense. And I know they liked what they saw from a guy like Jermaine Matthews. They liked what they saw from Lorenzo Styles Jr. and Jalen McLean. You really don't want to have to use those guys because you want number 8 back there.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the bottom line because he's a really good player. Last thing I want to touch on before we get out of here.
Caleb Downs is pretty good, too, though.
He certainly is. You're absolutely right, partner. Last thing I wanted to touch on, Arvell Reese. Jim Knowles says free Arvell. Ryan Day
It worked.
Did not really comment much on officiating. Jim Knowles just said that they were happy to have him back. That's obviously good news, Andy, for this team to have Arvell back in there in a game where you're probably going to play some 4-3.
He's part of the 4-3 package there, which they opened the game against Nebraska with. We've seen it just more this year, I think, than we did last year, even though it was part of the defense since he's been here as defense coordinator in Jim Knowles. But Arvell is also a piece they can use on the defensive line. We saw him line up there a couple of times. They got him creative with the defensive fronts. At one point, you pointed out Spencer in the press box. Arvell was on the edge, and then it was Jack Sawyer almost giving that illusion of him being at a defensive tackle position. And we saw more twists.
That was early in the game.
Yeah, it was early in the game. We saw more twists from that defensive front in the game. We also just saw bringing more rushers. So it was usually 5 or 6, especially on 3rd down. You wrote a story that was great about, diagnosing all the sacks, and those 3 sacks came on 3rd down, but they were all from not 4 rushers, right? It was more than that every single time. And Jim Knowles said that he think the blitzing worked pretty well. I think the one red flag, if you will, was the scrambles that Dylan Raiola was able to have on some of those pressures.
Yep.
And Jim Knowles talked about that today. They just need to be better in containing that and staying gap sound and assignment sound in those situations, because you're looking at a Penn State team. If Drew Aller plays, because that's up in the air, he can run the football as well.
But we don't really know, though, if he does play, how mobile is he?
Exactly.
Right.
But Pribula
can especially run the football.
Yeah.
And even if Aller plays and starts, they have already been mixing in Pribula in the game as a running threat as well. So regardless of where Aller's mobility is at, that is a concern this week.
You know what's funny is last week, how are you going to get sacks? I mean, you had no sacks against Oregon. Then you get 3 against Nebraska, if my numbers are right, correct?
Yes.
But they came on blitz situation. Now everybody's complaining that you had to use blitz to get sacks. I mean,
well,
no, I know. Well, but the bottom line is they got sacks. So
yeah, I'm with you, Tim.
It's continually the little marble in the cup game. You're moving around. Where's the marble? Or the P. It's just interesting. They found a way. This is not putting lipstick on a pig, but they found a way in the 4th quarter last week to get a game-winning drive. And then they found a way in the most pressure-packed part of that game when Nebraska had the football and then got the benefit of the bogus the bogus targeting call to get basically almost to midfield, they found a way defensively to just attack.
Yeah.
You know, Cody Simon, as I wrote about after the game, but that's not patting myself. I mean, anybody could see the game Cody Simon had, but the series he had after that was crazy. And Jordan Hancock, you know, we talk about Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs with their savvy. Jordan Hancock showing savvy.
Moxie
To get that last interception and put the game away and stuff. You know, there is such a thing as playing crappy for 3 1/3 quarters and then playing great, you know, when you got to play great.
Yeah.
And I thought they got that from both sides of the ball last week. Can that carry over? Is that going to be enough? I mean, you can say the same thing about Penn State, which I think trailed at Wisconsin.
Yeah,
But then Pribula, every way I pronounce him, you better keep your eye on him. That's for sure. Comes in for Drew Aller, who's definitely limping, and comes in and just changes the game for Penn State. You know, now the conundrum is Penn State going to kind of ride that wave, or are they going to go back to Drew Aller if he can play? I mean, you know what I mean? It's an interesting time for both of these teams going into Saturday.
Yeah, back to the rush point, just real quick before we get out of here. Every defensive coordinator wants to get home with 4. You don't want to have to bring pressure because then that.
Well, of course.
And so I think it's steps at a time with this defense because we know how talented it is. We know how good it can be. You didn't get home at all against Oregon no matter what you did. Then you got home by bringing pressure. Can you get home by bringing 4 this week and take another step forward against a pretty good unit there, but an offensive line that has injury issues of its own, which we will talk about later in the week? Those are the questions here for this defense. There's obviously questions on the offense. I apologize for cutting you off when you're talking about the quarterbacks. Now we're going to get out of here because we have a lot to get to over at Lettermen Row.
You were leading into something really big there for us to
Actually, Tim, now that you mention it, something that's really big is the game on Saturday. And if you'd like to go to the game on Saturday, go to gametime.co and use the Game Time app for all of your ticketing needs. They've got the Game Time Picks feature. It allows you to customize the way that you see, the way you see tickets. I don't know what I'm saying. Gametime.co and the Game
You can
Time
see where
app.
you're sitting.
Yeah, go use the code ON3, that's ON3, for $20 off your first purchase in the Game Time app or at gametime.co. Get tickets to Ohio State, Penn State. Get tickets to Ohio State, Purdue. Get tickets to the Wrigley game at Ohio State, Northwestern. Lettermen Row will be there. Why won't you? Go to gametime.co, use the Game Time app. You can get tickets there right now. It's not just sports. Go to the theater, go to concerts, do whatever you need to do. That's what Tim uses, that's what Andy uses, that's what I use. $20 off your first purchase when you use the code ON3 at gametime.co and the Game Time app. This has been a practice report, jam-packed with information.
It was more like a press conference report.
For sure. We're going to do a lot more of it over at lettermenrow.com. Go there right now. $1 for your first 7 days, 50% off for a year after that. Hell of a deal if you ask me, and if you ask Tim, and if you ask Andy. That's just Tim. That's just Andy. I'm just Spencer. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com. Like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you back in the Woody on Wednesday night.